Another aspect of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, brothers and sisters, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-wadud. He is the excessively loving. In the Arabic language, it's like an excessive form of love. As per the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that Allah loves you more than a mother loves her child. Think about this for one moment. Is there any greater love than the love of a mother?
Well, that entirely depends on the mother in question. Maternal domestic violence, as well as maternal support for honour violence, and worse yet, displays that not all mothers love their children. One such example is that of South African woman by the name of Pearl Marley. Marley was very much a tomboy while she was growing up, and so her mother made the irrational connection that she was therefore a lesbian. Whether she is or not is truly irrelevant to what happened next. At this point, I'd like to stop and offer a link to anyone who wishes to skip this segment, as it gets pretty grim. One day her mother returned from church with an older man and told her to go to her room, threatening her with starvation if she didn't do what was right. Marley went to her room and got dressed into her pajamas, and then the man entered the room. He got close to her and she started to resist, screaming, trying to get him to stop. All her mother did was come in and tell her to shut up. She was aged 12 when her own mother paid a man from church to rape her. It's a sadistic practice known as corrective rape. But it didn't just stop there, no. The mother asked for the man to move into the house and for him to continue raping her for the next 4 years of her life, just to be certain that she was no longer a lesbian. She got pregnant as a result of the raping, had a child, and then the raping ensued once again, as her son was stolen from her because she'd simply raised another gay child. Marley now works for an LGBT+ organisation that tackles these sorts of cases, this corrective rape, offering whatever little support they can to those who were raped in such a way. She's only allowed to see the child on weekends after extensive court battles. Yes, the love of a mother can be great, as Marley has shown through her attempting to see her son, regardless of the cost. But this is not always the case, as shown with her own mother. And isn't it also ironic that said atrocities are often committed under the guise of divine will? Witch burnings, exorcisms, honour killings. Religions can truly rot away the parental psyche.
This shows how transcendent Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His love is for us. We can't even describe it, conceptualize it, or reduce it to some kind of empirical reality. Allah's love transcends the best love we can imagine, which is the love of a mother for her child. And I want you to really realize this type of love. And this love should project our souls into loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And again, Hujjatul Islam al-Ghazali, he said in his book on love and intimacy with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that every human being has a natural, safe self-love. We all love ourselves, right? And I'm not saying this in an egocentric way. I love me. You know, it's a fitra thing. When I ask my son Zakaria, who do you love? He says, I love Mama, I love Baba, I love his brothers and sisters. And then he says, I love Allah, and I love the Messenger. And then he says, and I love Zakaria. Meaning he loves himself. And a child said this, so it is an indication that there is a natural form of self-love. Al-Ghazali said that if you really love yourself, if you truly love yourself, you have to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he gave an amazing rational thesis. And listen to this. He said, you want to prolong your existence. You want to feed yourself. You don't want to harm yourself. You want to feel happy. You want to run away from pain and go towards pleasure. So you have this self-love. If you're truly enlightened, this self-love must project you to the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and in doing so, you'll be able to realize His love. How? And he raises these questions. Who sustains you? Who created the asbab, the causes in the universe in order for you to feel happy, in order for you to feel love? Who is the source of love? Who maintains you? Who loves you? Who formed you? Who created you? Who even allowed you to understand the concept of love and the reality of love in the first place? Which is an amazing reality, as a famous poet said, when the pen writes of love, it breaks in two. And this is why Al-Ghazali said that from your understanding of why you love yourself, you have to love Allah. Because Allah created all of the causes in the universe in order for you to establish that love. And for you to actually have this sense of pleasure and to prolong your existence.
Fantastical claims with zero support makes for little more than word salad. Surely one could merely cut out God and love life, for it is said life that has developed via some external dictator, leading me to evolve this array of feelings and emotions. Yes, these come in both good and bad, but nature explains that all too well in the fact that it's apathetic, it's amoral. Meanwhile, we love, people love, even some other animals love. The universe may not care, the stars may not care, but we care. Not having Allah in the picture affects this in no way. However, it is also sad the way that you claim that every human loves themselves. In truth, not everyone does. Some people are not so lucky. Some people are inflicted with a mindset that cannot be overcome by mere positive thinking, for they lack that innate ability. If you tell a person with depression to simply get over it and to love themselves, you show yourself to a standard of compassion which is on par with that of a person who demands a coma patient merely to wake up and get to work. It's so naive that it's inhuman. Now, I hope you never have to see that in your family like I have. I hope you never have to be tested to the peak of your mettle to only then realize that what you as a family member of someone with depression have gone through is only a fraction of what they have to deal with their entire lives. A free, Western, upper-class Muslim who, though a little dim, but I think that's more down to socialization rather than inability, but otherwise fully able, both physically and mentally, will now tell the rest of the world how great everything is and just how much Allah loves them.
Now, interestingly, brothers and sisters, he also says, the one who loves himself but doesn't love Allah doesn't really love himself. He loves an illusion of himself, which is his ego. Because in reality, the ego is like an illusory self that we make into another God, as Sheikh eloquently said earlier. So Allah is the one that loves you.
So an abstract concept that represents an actual tangible thing that exists, that's an illusion. In that sense, love is an illusion, so is joy, pride and happiness. Meanwhile, a mythical deity, which is yet to be proven, that there is real. You'll certainly have to do better than that, Hamza. You are your ego as much as the next man, woman or other.
And through our own existential awareness, understanding our self-love, we must love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And a way to establish that true connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to actually, as the Quran says, to love Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and to follow the path of our beloved Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So we spoke about that Allah is the Rabb, the Master, that Allah is the one who is Al-Wadud. He is the one who loves you more than mothers love their child. I also want to talk about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being Al-Hakim. Allah is the wise. Many times in our lives, brothers and sisters, we're like, why does this happen to me? What's going on? I can't explain why there's so much evil and suffering in the world. Why do I have internal pain? Why is there external pain? Why the tsunami? Why earthquakes? Why all of these things? And through understanding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you'll be able to understand the inner realities of these things. Allah is Al-Hakim. He is the wise. From a general perspective, we understand this means there is wisdom permeating every aspect of the universe. We know there is cause and effect. We know that things do not happen for no reason. We don't believe in this crazy atheist chance hypothesis, which is quite funny actually.
Of course, because where did God come from if not merely random chance? The fact that I, as well as science, can conceive of a functioning universe without God means that this is not true. God is not necessary. In fact, God is what we call an unnecessary assumption, which is a burden to theoretical explanations of nature.
Because you know, like the fine-tuning of the cosmos of the universe and the natural laws of the universe and the constants of the universe, they were so finely tuned that to claim chance is to claim anything. It's what I call counter-discourse. It's not the chance like winning a lottery, it's the chance that your brain does some gymnastics, it reels over. Let me give you an example. To claim the universe is not as a result of wisdom but chance, it's like me claiming, you know my mother, she's not really my mother. She's a pink rhino that was born on Pluto, and she flew here in a giant feather. Now the atheist may say, you're stupid, Mr. Tzortzis. And I'll just say, but there's a chance. If you study logic, there is a chance. Feathers exist, the color pink exists, rhinos exist, Pluto exists. So there is a chance. It's very, very small, but there's still a chance. And it shows to him the fallacy of his discourse. You can claim anything. I can say, well, I believe in Islam, because there's a chance it's true. I believe you're not real. There's a chance it's true. Maybe my brain is in Mars and there's probes in my brain and an alien is making me think what I'm thinking now and feeling what I'm feeling now. There is a chance. So it just shows that the chance hypothesis is a ridiculous hypothesis. You know, when you read these books, all these beautiful numbers and atheists write them, it's actually what I would call, and in Urdu there's a beautiful saying in this, it's called bakwas. Yeah? It's actually a lot of rubbish. And you just have to speak to them this way sometimes, because this is like intellectual gymnastics veiling a certain intellectual arrogance. It's a load of rubbish.
Oh wow, you just broke my straw man meter. So you start discussing the chance, as in there was a chance that the universe would come into existence from a quantum state as a mathematical probability of said quantum state. Now, based off my very limited understanding of theoretical physics and the instability of quantum nothingness, I argue with a high probability that something would happen. Yes, science is still studying further into this field, yet we are only finding natural events, not a single supernatural one at all. But then you switch this into the false argument, well, there's a chance that this was the case, therefore it is the case. The two are not the same. The first is a discussion of probability around existence as well as founded positions based off evidence. The latter is an argument from ignorance, i.e. comparable to we don't know everything, therefore God. Meanwhile, science is actually working from a testable angle, and currently we see only natural processes building up in complexity via the rippling butterfly effect. Nowhere have we found evidence for a deity, and certainly not a wise deity. Why do I say this? Well, life exists only in remote parts of the universe because the laws exist in such a way. If God was the creator of said laws, this is a pretty bad job, as they could make life so much tougher or nature so much nicer. Just think, if God needed to enact specific laws to create life, doesn't that then mean that God is restricted by said laws? I guess you could call him a slave to them. Why don't you actually ensure that you have a case before being such a condescending little tit?
Anyway, so there's wisdom in the universe. But coming to the issue of like evil and suffering and all of these things, we need to jump out of a 3-year-old child's reality. Because some atheists, that they become atheists because of so-called evil, is because I would argue they have a 3-year-old's mind still. And I don't mean this in an offensive way. You know, a 3-year-old, say he wants to like go and touch the fireplace, because it's very colorful, there's flames, it's like a bit of blue and yellow, and he wants to put his hand. What does a father do? He rushes, he holds the hand, and he pulls him away so he doesn't get burnt. What does the child do? Cries and like really angry, and it's like, I hate my dad and you're evil, right? Dad's evil, right? Because he doesn't understand that he's going to hurt himself. Now this essentially is the reality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah knows the totality of knowledge and wisdom. He has the picture, we just have the pixel. And it's only through intellectual arrogance that we think that we must have the picture. Well, if we had the picture, then we would be Allah, which would deny His existence in the first place, which is illogical and irrational.
The problem is that children can learn the reasons. They can be taught them by those who do understand. That's why you need to sit down with your child and explain why something is bad or why something is wrong, not merely yell at them, scream at them, or beat them, because that's not going to teach them the reasons why it is wrong or it is bad. Yet your deity can do no such thing, or is at least unwilling to do so. Hell, he can't even prove the existence of himself, something which the smallest microbe can do merely by being. What's more is, how do you know he has this greater wisdom? He could simply be lying to you if he exists. Maybe he feeds off the suffering. Maybe he is the god of pain and anguish. If you claim we cannot know, you can't then turn around and claim, but I know. To return to your earlier words,
and it's only through intellectual arrogance that we think that we must have the picture.
Now you can't have it both ways, my friend.
And this is why when we reflect on the Quran, chapter 18, verse 65 onwards, Musa alayhi salam and his conversation with Khidr is an amazing discourse for us to understand that, you know what, let's humble ourselves. We just have the particular knowledge, as Ibn Kathir said when he was discussing in his commentary on this chapter. He was saying, look, human beings have the particulars, we don't have the totality. So you know this story very well. Musa alayhi salam goes very humbly to ask knowledge from Khidr because he gets some kind of inspiration that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given particular knowledge to Khidr. So Khidr says, you're not going to have patience with me. And Musa says, no, I'm going to be patient. So what does Khidr do? He makes a hole in a boat. Musa, he's like, this goes against the Mosaic law, as Ibn Kathir says. So Musa alayhi salam rightly says, why have you done this? What's wrong with you? And Khidr says, didn't I tell you won't be patient with me? And then it continues until Khidr kills a boy, until Khidr does all of these different things that seem evil and wrong. And at the end, Khidr explains the wisdom behind these things. So in particular, with concerning making a hole in the boat, what does Khidr say? That there was a king seizing every serviceable boat by force. So he wanted to make a hole in the boat so there would be no trouble. So the point here is that we have to understand and reflect and become deeper, not just scratch the surface, but dig deep and understand the implications of things and realize that at the end of the day, Allah is Al-Hakim and there is a divine wisdom for me.
Right, but if I were to go up and then strike you across the face and then claimed it to be the divine will of some mystical and as of yet unproven agent, would you accept that cop-out? The boat example supposedly had an explanation which, as of yet, both you and your God have failed to give for both natural and human evil in general. This is especially damning as you claim that your God is all-powerful. Doesn't that then mean that he could achieve his goals in an infinite number of ways? By claiming that this suffering is necessary, you are claiming that God is restricted to the path of suffering by some external force and is thus not all-powerful. He is not the creator. Imagine you are stuck on an island and you have infinite power and infinite knowledge. You want to get to a second island you see out in the distance. Now, I know that there are people on the island which have a boat, a small fishing family who live off the sea in peace. So you slaughter all of them and then steal the boat. You could have swum, you could have flown, you could have conjured up another boat in your mind, given the family a trade for their boat, dried up the sea, moved one island right next to the other so you can simply step onto it. Yet if you chose the path of pain and death, what would that tell you of your own character, Mr. Hamza? You certainly would not be able to define yourself as all-loving if you chose that path, as an all-loving person could not allow pain to exist, certainly not at their own hands. That there is the problem of evil.
Now someone may say, but I can't see the wisdom. I can't see the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But this is actually quite fallacious thinking. In the language of logic, it's called argumentum ad ignoratium. You're arguing from ignorance.
No, you have been presented a paradox. A paradox is not ignorance. The paradox is put simply that an all-knowing, all-powerful and all-loving God would know of evil, be capable of diverting all evil while simultaneously achieving their grand design, unless said grand design is suffering, and as an all-loving God would want to do so and would not have their goal being suffering. Until you can falsify this paradox, said paradox falsifies your definition of a deity in this universe. It's not a case of we don't know, therefore X, but the evidence appears to falsify your claims. Now you may either falsify this paradox or admit defeat. As yes, said argument is open to being falsified, but as of yet you haven't. What would be an argument from ignorance is going, we don't know where love comes from, therefore Allah.
And we shouldn't argue from ignorance, especially when we know Allah has the totality of knowledge. Because there'll be some knowledge and wisdom that you can never access from this perspective. So this makes us realize that there is a divine wisdom in play. And this divine wisdom is in line with His perfection because He is Al-Qudus, He is the perfect, the holy, and He is wholly good. As Ibn Taymiyyah, he mentions, the 14th century scholar, something very amazing. He says, look, at the end of the day, any type of evil and suffering you see doesn't contradict the nature of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's in line with a good, wise purpose, which we will understand or maybe even slightly appreciate when we reach paradise, inshallah. As the Prophet ﷺ said, that if someone suffered all of their life, 80 years, 90 years, they will be dipped in paradise for a split moment, and then he'll be asked, did you ever suffer? And then he would say, Wallahi, I've never suffered. And that's the reality of the beauty of Jannah, the beauty of the Akhirah, because it solves all of these problems.
You did not just attempt to strawman atheists into an argument from ignorance before going, we'll never know until we reach this place not yet proven to exist, known as heaven, therefore God must know, and therefore God. Bloody hypocrisy at its finest degree. I applaud you, Hamza, on your intellectual bankruptcy. You truly take it to new heights. But no, your cop-out of we don't know and can't know, therefore I'm justified in my belief in God, is the greatest argument from ignorance. If you see no evidence to reasonably support a belief in God, you must give up said belief in God, suspend it, at least to be intellectually honest. I myself take an epistemologically sound position of evidentialism and fallibility. I see no good reason to accept the existence of a deity, thus will not adopt a belief as such. I may be proven wrong in the future, but unless there is evidence of this, there is little reason to suspect so. With that said, I'm out for now, so take care.